Hey, Jason. That's you. When I say, hey, Jason, that means I'm talking to you.
Sorry, I was trying to read what was on the screen, so I wasn't really listening.
Did you happen to pour some of our 32-year-old French brandy into your glass?
Right, right here in my little tiny screen.
Look at that color. Look at the color on that liquid. I know we're not color guys, but look at that color. I'm just floored by it.
I don't know what to tell you. It's dark.
Well, so viewers, Joshua Hatton here, Jason Johnston yelling over there, Single Cask Nation. Today we are going to be talking about two bottlings that are going to go on sale Thursday, February 23rd. And it's sort of same old, same old. Anytime we put something on the World Wide Web, the launch of it is at noon Eastern time. So February 23rd, Thursday, noon Eastern, we will be launching our 32-year-old French brandy, finished in a PX cask for 9 months, as well as our 14-year-old North British. Jeepers Creepers. There we go. That was also finished in PX Sherry, but that one for about 14 months. But Jason, I had asked you, I said, which one do we pour first? Which bottling do we talk about initially? And you said, without hesitation, the French brandy, the 1989
100%,
brandy.
yeah.
Why
Yeah,
is
I
that?
think well, partly you've got, at a very base level, you've got the difference in ABV. So we've got 44.1% on the French brandy.
Mm.
We've got 57.1% on the grain. I also think for anybody coming to this video, we have never, as Single Cask Nation, released a French brandy from the cognac region or any other region. This is a
Oh,
first for us. And I want to talk about that first. I want to talk about the flavors that come from this brandy.
beauty. Well, there we go. Let's kick it off then. We have our Single Cask Nation French brandy, 1989 vintage, who, our beloved Jess Lomas is a 1989 vintage herself, as is our dear Swede Scott.
Indeed.
Um, so this was just under 32 years, and then we popped it into PX Sherry, Spanish oak PX Sherry for about 9 months.
Yeah, so talk to that process. So this is launched as Double Cask Nation. We've had
Yeah.
success with Double Cask Nation releases in the past, but we've taken cask number 4 and cask number 11
Hmm.
and we combined them and we married them. And we did it for a particular reason. Do you want to talk to that for our viewers?
Sure. So for those that aren't familiar, and then also just to reinforce it for those that are familiar, French brandies like cognac, like Armagnac, tend to be drier spirits, right? Really drying, big tannins on it. It is a grape-based product. The French are very proud of their grapes, but there is that
Mhm.
drying quality that they're always sort of looking for in their spirits. And me personally, I'll let you talk to it if you'd like, but me personally, I have a real sensitivity to tannins. So sometimes, you get an ultra aged bourbon, 15, 16, 20 plus years of age. And it's like, drinking, charcoal to me. It's just too drying. Um, so we wanted to figure out a way to combat that a little bit, right? And you and I had a conversation with Kirsty McCallum, and previously she was with Glenn Murray and Cuddy Sark. She's now moved on to another position. But in our conversation with her, when she was with Bunnahabhain and that, that whole group, Lich Egg and Tobermory and all that, she had found that moving spirit that was too drying, moving it into PX Sherry, gave it a bit of juiciness, kind of took out some of those drying qualities, but it was always this like it, you were fighting against the clock. You put it in too long and you could flood the spirit. You don't put
Mhm.
it in long enough and it's not giving you that juiciness that you're looking for. So we looked at it, every month, every other month or so, and then at around 9 months, it just boom, it hit it. It still has a really, really pleasant drying quality to it, but that
It
PX
does.
sort of juiciness kind of comes through. So, like, hats off to Kirsty McCallum for that hint, because I think it's taken these two casts that we had that were all already giving us great nose and palate notes, and just adding that PX just rounded it all out, gave it a juiciness to it without flooding it with PX.
Yeah. I'm hard, honestly. Like, I'm hard pressed. First of all, as I always tend to do, like, there's the oils in the glass, right?
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
For this 32-year-old product, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
that is mentally juicy. Um, for me, the question becomes, which is why I asked the question, why finish? Why do it? Did you do it for the color? Did you do it for some oomph? As some people think, did you do it because the product wasn't working previously? And I like the explanation that you give about being aware of astringency, keeping an eye on tannins, and then reintroducing this juiciness. And one of
Mhm,
the
mhm.
things that, you know, as you sit with older spirit, the wood takes on more of a role. And really, I'm thinking here about our Altmore 30-year-old, right? Where we were
Ah,
so
yeah, yeah, yeah.
proud of the fact that the Altmore spirit still shone through in that product, even with the sherry maturation
Yeah, yeah.
being, pretty big, pretty bold, pretty meaningful round about it.
Mhm.
And so, what I'm really enjoying in sitting here is the balance of spice, dryness,
Yeah.
juiciness, fruitiness, woodiness, right? The fact that this spent its 31 and a half years in ex Scotch casks
Mhm.
and then moved over into the PX, right? I can't imagine the ex Scotch casks were particularly active. This was our project. We're the ones that put it into PX. We know they had done something, but I don't think to a degree where you would say, oh, this is French brandy in ex Scotch casks.
So that's a really good point. So there's a couple points that I want to make, and what you just said really put it together. One of the nice things about brandy is that the use of overactive casks is not really preferable,
Right.
right? Because you really want that to highlight that grape, right? That the flavors coming from that grape. And that's what the French producers want. And so using ex Scotch whiskey casks, you know, didn't really, again, you don't want to flood the spirit with oak. Here's the interesting thing though. While the ex Scotch whiskey cask didn't flood the spirit with oak, I have samples before we put them into the wood, marry them together and put them into the wood. I have samples of that liquid before it went in. And this answers the other thing you said. Why put it into sherry? Why put it into PX? Did you want to add color? No. There- there's the color to it, right? Hold up your glass, Jason. Okay. Yes, it added some color, but we're already starting with really nice dark liquid. So
Yeah.
we got the color coming through without the flooding of flavor, which then, and I'm going to tie a little bow on this, talks to exactly why we are not color guys. Despite this being super dark liquid, the ex Scotch whiskey wasn't flooding the grape spirit with flavor. It's just framing it, and then adding it back in to the PX did just the same, added a roundness. Color doesn't mean that it's going to taste a certain way. Color just
Mhm.
means it's going to look sexy.
Yep.
And there you go.
Yeah. Sexy.
Yeah. So give me Jesus Christ. So give me some notes, Jason. What are you getting on the nose here and on the palate? While you're doing that, I will tell you the things that grab my attention off the bat is that sense of walking into a used bookshop. That dusty, warm attic wood kind of thing, that comforting old bookshop feel on the
But
nose.
but can I be more specific than
All
that?
right. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if this comes from walking into Scottish used bookstores, but when the sunlight shines through the window and it hits the books and it hits the shelves and it
Mm,
hits the soft furnishings in the room,
yep.
it's that full aroma. It's not just a library. It's actually sun coming through windows and warming up
Yeah.
those books. You know you grew up in a dank, cold, wet country when you can sense a book drying from sunlight coming through a window and that being a noticeable difference.
Oh my gosh. I imagine all the kids in your town growing up when the sun shone, your ears would perk, your nostrils would flare, and you say, is that wood? I mean, are those books drying after the cold Scottish rain?
It's true. It really does make a difference, especially
Mm,
to dust, like warm dust versus cold
mm,
dust.
mm-hmm.
And that was cold, not cold.
Yep. Good
Juicy, right? You
clarification.
can't get away from the word juicy.
You can't. I mean, and there's a
Lively.
lot going on in the palate. Lively is one thing. That's this idea of a used bookstore or warm sun on a book implies old, dusty, tired. But then you go and you taste it and it's vibrant. There's tiramisu, there's like sour cherries, there's all sorts of things. There's marzipan going on, there's like salted prunes going on. It's just tons of stuff.
The nose has a quality that it tends to be a Joshua note,
All
which
right.
is chicory. You throw chicory around a fair
Mm.
bit,
Yeah.
and on the nose I get that chicory,
Oh,
that
I like that.
right, which
Yeah.
is kind of it's another drier note, almost a spiced note,
Yeah, like in
like a
roasty
wood
as well.
spice
Yeah,
roasting.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's real nice.
On
Um,
the palate, as you were kind of going through some of the notes there, I just get this exuberant cigar leaf on the back of the palate.
I just said that.
It's
I just
it's
said that, this cigar wrapper thing.
unbelievable,
Yeah, yeah.
unbelievable. But it brings a pepperiness that to me isn't a a wooden cask sourced pepperiness, but it's that cigar leaf.
Mm,
It's it shocks me every time because it's so prominent, so pronounced,
mhm, mhm.
and so pleasant. Like it's not pepper like a Tormordor, right? Which is like cracked black
Yeah,
pepper
yeah, yeah, yeah,
set
sure.
on fire on your tongue. This is much more of a cigar pepperiness.
It tastes really good when you have to refill your glass. I'm just sort of, and it's easy, right? It's 44.1, and that is
Mhm.
natural strength to it. We did not dilute this at all. It was 40. Well, one of the casks was 48, 49. The other one
Something
was
like that. Something like that.
46-ish going in. And I forget who told us this. Maybe it was Ollie Chilton. But when you put spirit into sherry wood, you instantly lose 2 or 3 ABV percentage points. It just goes somewhere, whether it's in the wood, whether it gets evaporated or what. So technically the ABV came down, but it only came down because we put it into sherry oak
Yeah.
and that's it.
As I'm sitting drinking it, I'm not even sitting here tasting it. I'm sitting here drinking it. Um, for those
Mm.
who loved the Dalyuan that went out last year, that
Mm.
we were, yeah, I say proud of. We ended up being very proud of our happy accident, the first fill
Mm-hmm.
bourbon to the first fill sherry.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things that was doing are replicated here, right? You
Yeah.
can't get away from that big, juicy, ripe, fruity PX. Like it's just right there. But
Mm-hmm.
then that brandy, those grapes are bringing something to the party that the Dalyuin wasn't. Obviously, as 100% malted barley,
Mm.
but also the age difference, right? Here you've got 1989 distillate, as we said on the podcast, One Nation Under Whiskey, December 31st, 1989. And
Uh-huh.
so you've got the older distillate there, younger distillate on the Dalyuin, and then obviously there's the ABV differences going on here as well.
Mm.
But if you like that Dalyuin, and gosh, talk about the success of 2022. Like
Oh my
people
gosh.
talk about that Dalyuin all the time, everywhere.
Yep. Yeah. Just really quickly before we move on to the North
Yeah.
British,
Yep.
the Finnish chocolate covered cherries, like dark chocolate covered cherries, and like you're gonna like this note because it's really specific. When I was 15 years old, I got arrested for pulling fire alarms in my town. And for that, I had to do 40 hours of community service. And part of that community service was cleaning church pews. And that's what I'm getting on the finish is church pews. Just, oh, it's fantastic. Brings back such memories.
Scrub, scrub, scrub. One day there will be a French brandy finished for 9 months in a PX cask with my name on it. It's going to smell exactly like this. Today is that day, Joshua. Mazel.
So really quickly, yeah, go ahead.
Just before we transition, or maybe before you deliver the price here, there's the middle of the palate here, and again, I said this on One Nation Under Whiskey. There's a flavor that I keep getting that I just haven't been putting my finger on,
All right.
and I think it's reminding me of a cocktail, and it might actually be a little bit of sweet vermouth that I'm getting mid palate that
Mm-hmm.
brings some of the sweetness, but also brings some of the herbaceousness.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm getting mid palate, which has me thinking cocktail ingredient, 32-year-old French brandy.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine that? Well,
Yes.
so here,
Yes, I
perfect
can.
time,
Stick it in a
perfect timing,
Manhattan.
perfect timing to be delivering the price on this, which actually is not as crazy as you think it'd be. So 32 years old, 9 months in sherry, 1989 distillate. We've got what 282 bottles from the cask, and we're looking at $195 for 32-year-old spirit, dark as night, delicious as all get out. Cognac. Well, we can't list it as cognac, but this was made by a cognac producer, bottled in Scotland, finished in a PX cask. So we call it French brandy, but it's French brandy produced by a cognac producer in cognac region of France. So
Yeah.
there we
And
go.
call it what you want. It's absolutely delicious. And before we transition away, I'll give the tasting note here, and then we can compare and contrast. I've still got some in my glass for when we move on to the North British, Joshua.
So do I. I brought 2 glasses.
There you go. The tasting note, truncated note, exactly what we want from older French brandy. Delicate apples, sour cherries, and dark chocolate with pleasing oak. It's an after-dinner essential for sitting around a fall fire with treasured friends and maybe even a cigar. And I think that fall fire could easily be a spring fire.
It shows you the time of year we were in. We're like, do you think we can get this released by fall? Thank you, Global Logistics. No, we can't.
Yeah. Apparently, we should have used the word outdoor instead of a season. An
Yeah.
outdoor fire
We're
with
not,
a cigar with friends. All right.
we're not smart people, Jason.
You know.
Here's my this is do you remember this trick from
Wow.
David Stirk? He would say if you want to know if there's caramel coloring in your whiskey, go ahead and give it a shake. If the bubbles at the end are the same color as the whiskey, then you know it's caramel colored. And if they're pretty much white, then you know it's not. There you go. Pretty much white bubbles. So this is our North British 14-year-old PX finish. This is the same Pedro Jimenez producer that we used for the French Brandy. So we work with Miguel Martin as a cask broker, and he gives us an option of American oak, European oak, Spanish oak. And for our PX, we decided to go with Spanish oak. It's much softer. It's much more porous. It's also a bit more rare, kind of costs a bit more, but I think it's doing to whiskey what European or American oak couldn't do, despite the type of wine that was previously in the cask. So I'm really happy that we went with Spanish oak on this one.
And look, it is remarkably lighter than the French brandy.
Oh, is it? You know what? Let's see.
Daddy's a joke. Yeah, I can get the light to shine through this one.
Yeah,
I couldn't
yeah.
get the light to shine through the French
Yeah.
brandy.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm going to continue the thread that I established with the French brandy in talking about our Altmore 30 from back in the day.
Okay.
Yes, it was finished for 14 months. Yes, some casks were brought together. The grain whiskey is still here. There is this delicious orange quality going on in here that speaks to the brightness and the liveliness of grain whiskey.
But
there's a grain sweetness.
I agree with all of that. The only thing that I would change is that, typically speaking, North British seems to have a slightly heavier style than, say, Invergordon or Cambus once
It's
did.
not vanilla ice cream, right?
No,
like the Invergordon
no.
vanilla ice cream. It's not that.
And it's, for me, that's part of the reason why I think we made the right decision in pairing this with PX, because you got that heavier component that I was hoping would glom onto the sherry, or vice versa, have the sherry glom onto that heavier spirit style. Because I mean, I remember talking about this, saying, if we do this right, this will be something that would please both a bourbon palate and a single malt palate, right? It's doing a lot of the things that both of those things do, while at the same time doing things that only grain whiskey does. It really is a bit of a an all-rounder from that standpoint.
Remember 5 minutes ago when I said chicory on the French brandy is a note that makes me think of you? The North British has another note that makes me think of you.
Oh,
which
I know
is
what it is. Yeah, go on.
Incense.
Oh, that's interesting. I thought you were going to say pickled walnuts. Incense. I like that.
I feel like there was a battle not to say pickled walnuts with the French brandy. but the incense on the nose of the North British, like, it's that delicate spice smoke, oftentimes across a room, in a neighboring room.
Oh my God, Jason. The palate on this it explodes. Like, it is just a bam. I feel like the grain whiskey is the stuff. How should I say this? I feel like the PX is just driving that grain flavor through. And so you're getting like grain, and then the PX starts to grow as it gets towards the finish.
So for viewers who maybe aren't as familiar with Pedro Jimenez sherry, when you're using PX as a shorthand, what are you saying is pushing through there? What types of flavors?
Thank you. So if you're not familiar with PX or Pedro Jimenez sherry, it is a darker sherry, a much sweeter sherry. it's quite often a dessert sherry, right? It's a
After, yeah,
digestif.
even after, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, when I'm looking at flavors, I'm looking at just, heavy chocolate, lava cake, um, I'm looking at burnt caramel. I'm looking at orange marmalade over like buttered toast. Like
Absolutely,
all of
absolutely.
these lovely, lovely, warming flavors coming through.
Yeah, rich, unctuous, some
Yeah,
spice, some heavy fruits.
remarkable.
And that's, again, just to circle back to what you were saying a moment ago, I don't think all grain whiskey gets away with very active sherry cask finishing.
No.
It is very easy to lose grain when you
Mhm.
go to heavy sherry.
Delicate.
You know,
Mhm.
it's oftentimes why you find grain maturing in refill bourbon, right? It's just to give the spirit room to grow into itself.
Mhm.
You do need to take a grain spirit that can stand up for itself to put against PX. And even then, it's only 14 months, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right, we're talking about grain that was 13 years old that moved into that PX for the 14 months.
And I would argue what you're saying here is it's not as if an extended period of time would turn that grain whiskey into a bad whiskey. It's not the case. It could, at the very end of the day, be an amazing whiskey. But if we're looking to highlight the spirit character from that distillery, that's when you have to be a little careful. And as lovers of grain whiskey, we never wanted to hide that.
I think if you keep it in longer, you're going to get whiskey flavored sherry. You're not
Huh.
going to get sherry finished grain whiskey.
Which is what some people would want, right? There's some people who want that. There's
Whiskey
people.
flavored sherry.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's a volume, and if you take the grain at volume 8, the longer it sits in that PX, the volume dial is being turned down, and the
Mm,
longer you leave it in, you're hitting. Oh, now it's a 4 volume. Now it's a 2 volume. Now it's 0,
yeah.
right? And this is still up there, which is why we pulled it, which is why we bottled it,
Mm.
which is why we're now selling it, Joshua.
Man, this is a Terry's chocolate orange in a glass. Like it just give me that orange, give me that chocolate. Take a pile of cloves and put it in that orange and get festive. Go ahead. What
I,
else you got?
I think if you drank this North British by itself, you'd be getting dark chocolate. On those chocolate notes, I think it would be dark chocolate.
Mhm.
Coming from the French brandy, which really is dark chocolate cherries, and coming into this North British,
Yeah.
my chocolate notes in this pairing are more milk chocolate for the
Mhm.
North British. There's
Mm.
a softness, there's a creaminess, there's there's a lighter touch from the chocolate going on in the North British
There you go.
when compared to the French brandy.
It's all context, right? That
A hundred
what you
percent,
what
hundred
you
percent,
had before changes what you're gonna have next.
100%.
Man, so go ahead. Go ahead.
I would also add,
Go
and I was
ahead.
going to say this with the French brandy, but I was waiting until we had the North British as well. I think there's an element here where they're both pull the cork on a Friday and recycle the bottle on a Monday.
Because they're that easy drinking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that French brandy at 44.1 is danger juice. I think you could drink a lot of that with your friends and cigars and maybe a nice beer chaser on the side to keep the
Ah,
palate wet. I think you could polish off a
it's
lot of
pretty
that.
crushable. Yeah. Is there a hashtag you need to throw in there?
Yeah. Do we have a banner? Hashtag please drink the whole bottle responsibly.
We will in 2 and 2.
Now we can see Joshua's typos doing it in the moment. Yeah,
Oh
we
boy.
need to keep hashtag please drink the whole bottle responsibly on retainer. We need to keep that close. Here, while you're typing that, I will read the tasting note on the label here.
Go ahead.
A Scottish grain whiskey that can please a bourbon lover as easily as a single malt aficionado. Well, that's a question. That was phrased as a question. A Scottish grain whiskey that can please a bourbon lover as easily as a single malt aficionado? Answer: absolutely.
Absolutely.
What's not to love about sweet grain dancing with rich dark fruits framed by exuberant burnt oak?
I love your. So I know that's a Jason note when the use of exuberant oak is applied. But I tell you, all that exuberant oak makes you want to drink the whole bottle responsibly. Did I spell everything right? I think I
You
spelled.
did. Disappointingly, you did.
Disappointingly. Well, I got a finger for you.
Price
So,
point on this, Joshua?
so price point on this will be 115, 115. And then just so everybody's aware, so where the French Brandy was a double Cask Nation.
Yeah.
This North British is what we are calling a single batch nation. And so there's actually 800 bottles of this that we have. However, we're only releasing 250 of them right now.
Yeah, limited release, 250 bottles. Get it sold, get it out the door. This is both of these bottles are going to please last year's Dalyuan happy accident drinkers.
So,
there's no doubt about it.
Without a doubt. And what have people been asking for a long time? When are you going to bottle more Scotch whiskey? Well, here we are, 14-year-old North British. However, because we're a company that wants to keep growing, keep discovering new things, we're also launching our very first French Brandy here. What a way to kick off 2023 with these two big, massive sherry bombs where they're just like you had said. You just want to drink the whole bottle, like open it up on the Friday, recycle it on the Monday, throw out the cork. Who needs a cork when you have whiskey this good or cognac, brandy this good?
Cognac region distillate this good.
Region distillate this good. Yes.
All right. Well, oh gosh, that marzipan comes back in when I revisit the French Brandy. That marzipan really comes with that sweet almond paste.
Coming back to the French Brandy, having come from the North British, and that grape distillate really comes through, that bright sweetness, a hint of sour, just an absolute hint of sour grape peels on that coming through.
Yeah.
Grape skins, I should say.
That French Brandy almost has a quality of and I'm never sure how to pronounce it. Is it a creek? The Kreik, the beer that has a bit of sourness to it, bit of grain in the background, bit of fruitiness to it. It's got that going on. That's a real little cracker.
It also has some big league chew going on the nose. That's very nice. All right. All right, Jason. I think it's time to close this down. Again, this is being launched Thursday, February 23rd at 12 noon Eastern. We'll have 282 bottles of our 1989 distillate, 32-year-old French Brandy, $195 per bottle. And then we'll have 250 bottles of our 14-year-old North British, $115 per bottle. There is no limit on either bottling, but supplies are limited. And of course, we have our $15 flat rate shipping. So if you want to get a bottle of each, awesome, $15 to ship. If you wanted to get 2 bottles of each, awesome, $15 to ship.
Absolutely. And we've still got bits and bobs on the website, so feel free to add on to your order as well.
Fill your boots, as the kids say.
All right.
Oh, you know
Delicious.
what else?
Really, really delicious.
You know what else? Because this is the channel that we use for our extra. It's all about whiskey podcast. If you liked this tasting note, if you like our podcasts, I would smash that subscribe
Oh,
button
please.
below.
Please.
Ba-boom.
Oh, that would be delightful. Delightful.
All right, Jason.
All right. Happy sales. Happy
Happy
purchasing.
sales. Happy drinking. Cheers, everybody.